Hey guys, Dr. White here. We're going over lesson 9.2. We're going to be introducing you to the making a circuit with another program that's not the FET program. We're going to be making a circuit with a program called TinkerCad. You guys should all have your sign on for TinkerCAD. This is the one we used to make the houses with the 3D modeling, but they have another section in it for circuits. So we're going to be using that for our simulator. I'm going to be introducing something called the breadboard and also the Arduino, which is our microcontroller. We're going to use that a little bit later to do some more cool stuff with our circuits and programming. Okay, so let me share my screen here. So this is going to be lesson 9.2. Okay, so lesson 2 in section in unit 9. Okay, we've got our sort of activities. And if you click on this link, it'll take you to the TinkerCAD website, and it should look fairly familiar. So this is your dashboard. Okay, so we're going over to the left-hand side. We're not going to do 3D designs. We're going to go down to circuits, and then you're going to create a new circuit. All right. Now, just like in the FET simulation where you had those components that you could add, here they're on the right-hand side. Okay, so we're just going to start off simple, and we're going to do a circuit, a battery. Okay, so we're going to add the 9-volt battery in, so you can just drag it in. I'm going to change the orientation of my 9-volt battery here, so it's kind of straight up. Okay, the other thing we're going to do is add an LED. Okay, and then we will add our resistor. Okay, remember, I've got a question in the lesson. Okay, why are we adding a resistor? Why is it important to add a resistor? What happens if we have too much current flowing? We can actually do that right now. Let's just focus in on our first circuit. So I'm going to make a circuit without the resistor. Let's see what happens. So the LED is here. Now, one of the things, you've always got two pins on an LED. One of the legs is always going to be longer than the other one. Okay, so the right-hand leg, which is kind of the crooked leg here, this is called your anode pin, and this always needs to go to the positive side of the battery. Okay, and then this leg always needs to go to the negative side, the shorter leg of the pin, right? So we kind of got a little crisscross there. But you can see we've got our circuit, right? Electrons are flowing through the negative side, flowing through the LED, and it's coming back to the positive side. If I start the simulation, guess what happens? My LED is actually going to explode. There's too much current going through the LED. And if there's too much current, there generates too much heat, too much power, and the LED is going to pop and melt. You'll know it when your LED blows up because it'll make a noise. Okay, so we need a resistor. So I'm going to put a resistor. Remember, you can put a resistor on either side of your LED. It really doesn't matter. So I'm going to connect this to my negative. Right, and I'm going to connect back my positive again. So now I've got a resistor in my circuit. Let's turn it on, see what happens. Oh, our LED lights up happily. Okay. All right, so this is a circuit, but it's kind of hard to if we wanted to make some more complex circuits, it's kind of hard to kind of put a bunch of stuff, like if we're going to wire this all up together. So we're going to introduce something called a breadboard, and a solderless breadboard. You guys are going to be using this for your prototyping, right? So I'm just going to get rid of all this stuff here. Let's keep the 9-volt battery. All right, so the breadboard is right here. Okay, I'm going to show you how to actually use the breadboard, and then I'm going to put back in my LED I'll put it right here for the time being, and I'll keep my resistor in. Okay, so explanation of the breadboard. All right, so the way a breadboard works is that the holes in the middle, you see these rows of 5. Each of these rows of 5 is connected. Actually, what I'm going to do is I'm going to change the orientation of this. So each of these rows of 5 is connected, right? So it's basically like a wire running in between these holes. So if you put one thing on one side and another thing on the other, they're going to be connected with that wire. The other thing that a breadboard has is these on the side, they've got long vertical connections here. So this would be the positive and this is the negative. And the reason why we do this is just for easy connections when you're trying to power up multiple things on your breadboard, we can run them through that. Okay, so I'm going to show you how we're actually going to set this thing up. So what you're going to do is you are going to, I'm going to take my positive lead from my battery and I'm going to connect it to my positive vertical side here. And then I'm going to take my negative lead and I'm going to connect it to the negative side. Maybe I'll just put it up here. Okay, so now this whole row is acting as the positive side of my battery. This whole row is acting as the negative side of my battery. So anything that I connect in there is going to be like I'm connecting it to the battery. All right, what I'm going to do to my LED, I'm going to rotate it. Okay, so I'm going to put my LED and I'm going to put it across 2 rows, right? So you can see that I'm actually spanning across my 8 row and my 9 row, right? So this is essentially, if I put anything else in this row, it's going to be like a wire, okay, that's going to be connected to my LED. Okay. Now I've got my my resistor. What I'm going to do is I'm going to connect my resistor to row 8. All right. So if you zoom in, I've got my resistor connected to row 8, and that means it's connected to the short leg of my LED. All right. And then I'm going to make a wire. Okay. Again, these green things are wires. You can change the colors if you want. Usually people say the red wire goes to the positive end of the battery and the black wire goes to the negative end, right? And I can run my wire from row 9. I'm going to run that to the positive side, the positive power bus coming out of the positive side of my battery, right? So I have essentially made a circuit. It looks a little bit different than the first circuit, but it's still just a circuit, okay? So if I track the electrons, right? So the electrons are going through the negative, okay, coming through here, going down the vertical, coming through the resistor, slowing down a little bit, going through my LED, coming back towards the positive end of the battery, and then going back up and then through this wire here. And this is my circuit. It just looks a little bit different. If I start the simulation, look at that, my LED lights up. So this is activity number 2 for you, okay? Last activity, we're actually going to, instead of a battery, we are actually going to use something called the Arduino. I'm going to get rid of this battery. I'm going to go down here. I'm going to click on this complicated looking thing right here. Here is my Arduino, okay? I'm going to rotate this so it's actually vertical, kind of looks like what it's going to look like on your prototyping boards here, okay? So now we've got a lot of different sort of pins here that we can use in the Arduino. Basically, the Arduino, it's called a microcontroller. It's basically a little mini computer, and so you can program it to actually do really interesting things with the electricity inside of your circuit, okay? But we're only going to use a couple of components here. What we're going to do is simply, we're going to use the power. Basically, think of, we're just going to use the Arduino as a giant battery, and we're going to use the positive end to power up our breadboard and our circuit, and we'll run it back to the negative end. Okay, in the Arduino, the positive end of the battery, as it were, is the 5-volt pin. All right, so we're just going to connect a wire from the 5-volt pin, and we're going to bring it to that same positive side of our breadboard. Okay, and I'm going to change that to a red wire just to keep things clear. Okay, now the negative side is actually going to go to what's called ground. Okay, so I'm going to run a wire to ground, and I will change the color. All right, so this is just like I've hooked up a battery to my circuit, and I've done it through the Arduino. Okay, so it's the 5-volt power, and again, this is going to come from, you're going to hook this up to your computer, so this is all going to come, the voltage is going to come from your computer. Okay, and it's a little bit less than the 9-volt, it's 5 volts, and then the electrons are going to run back to ground. Okay, if we follow the electrons, right, they're actually flowing from the negative, from ground. They go through the negative, they go through the resistor, they slow down a bit, go through the LED, that comes back to the positive, and then it gets driven into the 5-volt pin there. Okay, so let's we know that it works if we can actually turn on our LED, start the simulation, and yes, you can see that it plugged in the little cable there. All right, so those are the 3 activities that you're going to do today. Mostly, I just want you to mess around with TinkerCad, get comfortable with it, and if you can put a screenshot into the lesson, then I'll know that you know how to manipulate TinkerCad. All right. All right, guys, good luck.